I have some news. Yen Press is doing their own official audiobooks, including SAO, starting in August. This means I need to remove all my Kadokawa-owned audiobooks from YouTube, or I will lose this channel entirely. They will remain on SoundCloud, but don't get your hopes up, they will remain there forever. No, I am not ever going to be in one of these audiobooks ever. It's American-only work, and I'm not American. For patrons who are concerned, Spice and Wolf will continue, but I cannot with confidence say it will last forever due to these developments. I'm not happy about it, but at least official light novel audiobooks are becoming a thing. We'll see how it pans out and if they follow through on it. But I knew it was going to happen eventually. I haven't done audiobooks on this channel in a while anyway, and I can't do them anymore because I made a whole big video extensively talking about as to why it doesn't really work. So I want to move on and do new things. For a decent bit, I've been wanting to do something new with this channel that could potentially turn it into a real income, but of course that's challenging, especially these days. Doing it properly, you need to treat it like a business to some extent. Depending on if YouTube shows you my stuff, you may have noticed I made a handful of very different videos since being unable to continue audiobooks on YouTube. If you're new here and not seen my video on that, feel free to check it out. It's a bit aggressively worded because I've dealt with persistent people and many of the same comments. I've learned unless you make it very obvious, people won't get the message. It's an unfortunate situation since many of you subscribed for a very specific thing, and I'm unable to deliver on it anymore. So the only options are to either abandon the channel or make completely different content. To do this requires experimentation and rebranding, which is very hard to do. In some cases, people will try everything they can and nothing works, so they start a new channel. It's not at that point for me, and I still believe I can save this. So, why the huge delays and gaps in content? Health is a big reason, but you may have noticed I'm a virtual YouTuber. I've been through different looks, 3 of them in fact, and making the jump to 3D wasn't smooth. It's hard to find good help, and I didn't have good experiences with the artists. They would give me confident estimates, then take much longer than they said. This current version took several months to complete, when the original estimate was under a month. I needed to get some outside help to even make it usable. Even then, this model still has several outstanding issues, such as not working properly with chroma key from the waist down due to some design decisions that I told the artist not to do, and then due to me getting so tired of it, I just kind of overlooked that bit and just moved on. There's clipping whenever you move the arms, and when it's inspected closely, the textures look like shit. Shaders could also be a lot better. So instead of making new content with what I had, I chose to wait until the model was completed. This was also motivated by some awful health issues that have been ongoing for a few years or so. I didn't want to confuse people with swapping appearances too much. This was a mistake in hindsight. I'm honestly still not happy with the full appearance. I've decided I'm going back to using Live 2D, which is why you see me using it now. The reason for this is that motion capture has improved a great deal since the last time I used this, and it's way easier to use now. I was using a completely different program called FaceRig. It's very outdated. Even when I used it 2 years ago, it felt very, very jank. And it was just annoying in general and didn't really give me what I needed. Whereas the 3D stuff had better features, and I had content planned to do in 3D, like stuff that you could only do in 3D. But all of those plans fell through mostly because I couldn't find people to actually get it off the ground. And it just became way too stressful and ultimately just didn't seem worth it or really realistically possible unless I just do everything myself and learn how to do art from scratch and learn how to like just, you know, rig, do 3D art, like the whole works. And that's something that would take several years to build up, which is why I am totally fine with just, you know, paying people for it. But you can't find anybody, so it's not even a question of money. It's just you can't get anybody. So now that I've explained why I've been mostly dead, let's talk about what I have made. I can say I'm not particularly proud of the review content. Anime and games are difficult to review or make commentary pieces on. I've realized through many scripts I've tossed, most fictional works don't have much worth talking about, which makes those videos much harder to be entertaining. To solve this, I tried short videos, quickly giving my thoughts on a work, with a few stupid jokes. The purpose of these videos are easy to consume content which summarize something so you can make an informed decision on how you spend your time. But this is mostly dependent on seasonal anime, and most aren't worth a video. There's entertaining anime every season, but everyone's already watching it. You don't need me to tell you to watch Dr. Stone, Re:Zero, and My Hero Academia. Even then, I don't have a lot to say about some stuff that I like. And if I do, I'm not contributing anything to the conversation. You have likely watched their videos before mine, or have read opinions on Reddit, or God help you, Twitter. In 2021, there are many resources to find media you may like, with more accessibility than ever. I think review content, like styled review content, has become redundant. When seeing clips on social media or watching the episode on a streaming service is just simply a better resource. Plus, creating these videos don't align with my goals very well. I was creating service-based videos that weren't centered around entertainment, strictly speaking. The other major issue is this pesky thing every YouTuber complains about called Content ID, and it's been, demonetizing and geo-blocking most of these. Well, demonetizing is not really the correct term, more like taking the ad revenue away from me. And I actually have had some videos just straight up get demonetized, mostly just due to their content, which doesn't entirely surprise me, or they just get, like, somewhat partially monetized. The main thing Content ID does is it basically, in the case of anime stuff, more often than not, just geo-blocks the video, which means nobody in the world can see it. Which is actually what happened with my recent video, my last video, on Mushoku Tensei. Like, I did that kind of style that I talked about previously with it. And that video got, like, geo-blocked a week or so after it came out. And I've also noticed that when it comes to stuff getting partial monetization or getting demonetized or getting Content ID'd, it tends to leave some kind of a flag on the video where it gets, like, less visibility on the website. There's not necessarily outright proof of this, but I have seen a pattern of it with the videos on my channel, where I can't really think of any reason why a video would perform that terribly, but it's really hard to say. But it really wouldn't surprise me if, like, a video of that nature just gets less visibility because it makes YouTube less money. That would just make sense. They would rather have something that has higher ad suitability. So specifically with anime, Content ID is something that probably most of you know about, just because a lot of YouTubers talk about it, because it literally dictates everything on this platform. So because those videos that I was making, the newer videos, most of them were using footage from an anime I was talking about, and I would use footage to, like, support my points and make a more visually engaging video so people don't click off as quickly. But because humans aren't involved, it doesn't understand context, and Content ID does not operate under fair use or any kind of, like, normal laws. In most cases, it's actually more strict than actual copyright law is. So it's all, like, completely automated and is not, like, dictated by a human, just due to the nature of how YouTube works. So for years now, it's been around, and it continues to get better and better at what it does. And myself and others have tried workarounds, and they don't work at all, or they only work sometimes. It's a lot more complicated than that. Like, people have literally written, like, papers about this topic. It is really in depth, so there's just way too much to go into this type of video. But the direction it's mostly at already, especially for audio, is detection methods just have kind of reached a point where nothing works. Like, there's no workarounds to like spoof the bots. And if there is a workaround, it usually doesn't stick, because once the algorithm for the content ID changes, the videos get scanned again and then new stuff gets flagged. Like, for instance, the Spice and Wolf YouTube versions of like the audiobooks that I pulled years ago, those still like are getting frequently flagged for content ID for music that I used as like the background music and stuff. And they never got flagged for years, but now they're getting flagged like a whole bunch. So anyway, in conclusion, I've given up on making these videos and have removed most of them from my channel already. I've had most of them removed for 2 or 3 weeks, I think. And part of the reason for that is just because of the content ID liability issue, but also because when you have a poorly performing video or a bunch of videos, YouTube punishes your visibility with people who click off early on those videos, and it makes it less likely for your videos to get recommended to those people in the future. So it's not like you're getting a whole, like, big, shadow ban or anything like that. It's not that extreme, but it is for like your audience. When they don't like watch your stuff, it just like you get buried unless they're looking at the subscription feed or they have notifications enabled through the bell and stuff. So it's basically those videos that don't perform well and get people clicking off, or they get ignored or whatever, they're liability for the channel, and they can't stay on the channel as a result. So it's just overall bad for keeping an audience. Except the bookworm one, because that one's the only one out of all those videos that actually performed well enough. Not like amazingly, but it did okay. And honestly, I don't really know why that is. Maybe it was the thumbnail. A lot of the times it is. Or maybe it's because it had more to do with what you guys were interested in. It's genuinely hard to tell. So you may ask, why not video games or perhaps live action stuff? Well, I did a video game review once, like a fairly traditional styled video game review, which I worked on for 2 weeks, and it was actually pretty extensive, and I learned a lot of useful stuff and also some stuff that, like, is kind of a waste of time. But I think for games in particular, there are better ways to present it than what I did with my video. Live action stuff mostly runs into the same issues as anime as well, with content ID and stuff. Frankly speaking, these days, making memes about media is a much better way to get people to watch them than it is reviewing them. It's also way faster and a lot easier to do. It just depends on how you do it, because again, content ID kind of prevents a lot of that, particularly on YouTube. There has to be very certain ways you have to do it. So speaking of like the meme stuff, let's talk about the meme shitpost videos. What I posted on here did really well for how much time I spent making them, which comparatively to any of this other stuff, very little. The Hero Academia one in particular performed great, since people search for Hero Academia sound effects apparently, like, quite a lot, and I'm in the results for some reason. Many people did click on it and watch like a good portion of the video. The reasoning for why it got traffic and visibility is bizarre, but people very clearly liked the video. So I guess it was a success in that sense. But it did have severe problems with content ID. Like, I had to make multiple versions of that, and I had to destroy some of the video entirely to make it almost unwatchable, just so I could show like some parts. And even then, there were certain segments that I worked on that I had to absolutely entirely cut, because I could not put it in the video. It would always get flagged no matter what I did. I did enjoy making it, and it was like easier, like I said, and it did have like creativity behind it, because I do sound design stuff, and I learned a lot about audio and sound design through all the audiobook stuff and how I implement it in that. So it was pretty interesting and fun to do it with like visual stuff. But again, the content ID issues don't encourage me too much to continue making them, but I did have fun at least. So one idea I had, which I made a community post about, are lore videos for various anime stories, as well as videos talking about adaptation differences or fun facts about characters, stuff like that. Since I'm unable to do audiobooks, it could be a nice compromise. While I'm sure it's not everyone, I know some people watch them to find out what's different, from the source material, but don't have time, ability, or patience to read. I think it's a solid idea, but it runs into major issues on presentation. Just like the review videos, I haven't figured out a way to make them engaging to watch. They would otherwise be closer to podcasts, which isn't what I want, and it wouldn't bring in viewers, or at least it wouldn't keep any viewers. Even if I use official artwork, like from manga or stuff like that, even fan art, which is really kind of iffy because, artist permissions, stuff like that, it's kind of one of those things where, like, you don't really want to touch it. As far as that goes, too, even with, like, official artwork, like, if I use straight out of, like, manga panels just to kind of illustrate stuff that's going on, or even if I used stills from, like, anime, like, screenshots and stuff, that's even in the future looking pretty sketch, possibly the nearer future. In fact, there's already been people who've been struck and have had, like, copyright issues from posting, like, Shonen Jump manga strips in their YouTube videos, even if it is, like, actual fair use and stuff. But again, the way that Content ID works has literally nothing to do with how US law works with this stuff. It is a completely different system and way more strict. So the looming threat of this whole thing in, like, every kind of medium and form is really becoming more of a thing. Plus, the longevity of the idea itself isn't there. I would eventually run out of videos. You can't do it forever. There's a limited amount of translated source material out there, which even has enough material to make a video about. It's limited even further by the fact most stories aren't popular enough to be worth making a video. So it may not be the best idea. At best, I could make them now and then, but they wouldn't be enough to grow a channel. But again, I still have that major problem of presentation. And if I start using any, like, copywritten music or whatever, or rather anything that's, can be tripped up in the Content ID system, it's going to be more of the same thing. More of the same problems that I've been experiencing. So I was pretty sure about it when I made that community post, but having more time to reflect on it and doing more research, it may not be the best idea. But overall, I don't feel confident that it would be enough to grow the channel. The last big thing I've thought a ton about is streaming. I've even tried a handful of streams right here and on Twitch over the past couple years. Not many, but I've definitely messed around with it quite a bit, done a lot of research, learned a lot about it. My main hang-up as a creator is the difficulty to make streams good content. Of course, that's very subjective, but it's easy to become disposable content that only matters when it's live. What incentive is there for someone to look at the VODs? The next best thing one can do to make streams matter is trying to create clippable content. But I could be just looking at it the wrong way. I often overthink everything with this stuff, so who am I to argue against it? Like, when live streaming games in particular is bigger than ever. In fact, I watch lots of people stream them. Many of you probably do too, I would assume. At the very least, you check out highlights and clips. Like, I most certainly think that most of you would do that part. Even when it comes to VODs, I've seen some people get a lot of views on those. Especially over time, it does tend to add up quite a bit. Once you get a larger catalog going and it's actually, like, decent. It really does seem to be on a case-by-case basis. There's been a lot of interesting types of stuff I've looked at for that. Particularly in the VTubing, like, area of things on YouTube, VODs seem to do pretty damn decently. I think it mostly just depends on your level of popularity and what kind of content you're making. So it's very possible many of my concerns are unfounded because a lot of them come from outside the VTuber space, which frankly speaking, there's quite a few differences, at least at the moment, with how VTubing works on YouTube or on Twitch, as opposed to how it works on, like, you know, for normal streamers and stuff like that, or normal YouTubers. If I want to go this direction, I'm sure that I can find a way to make regularly streaming a comfortable and fun thing for myself, even if the chat will inevitably be quite dead until I grow more. That's just kind of how it is with this stuff. Like, it's just how it goes. As a concept, it remains the most attractive direction to take. There's a reason so many creators, you know, have converted to this, and it's mostly because of what I talked about earlier, that it's one of the last bastions remaining for being able to entertain people online, potentially make a living from it, and not have bots and suits trying to kill your channel. Maybe streaming is the direction this channel needs to take, because frankly speaking, right now I can't think of anything else that I can do. It's really gotten to that point where I've tried a lot of stuff, I've looked at what's actually feasible, I've done the research, and most stuff either just doesn't last long enough and I'll be back at the same problem again that I have right now, or it's going to have a constant barrage of content ID bullshit, which is super stressful, really difficult to work around, and ultimately seems like an inevitable thing where you're just going to get to a point in the near future where none of this stuff will work and you will always get slammed with it, and it will ruin a whole bunch of genres on YouTube like it already has. There's a whole bunch of genres on YouTube that don't exist anymore, or if they do exist, very, very few people are still doing them. I think one of the things that just kind of going off topic slightly, one of the things that I've observed is a great deal of media review type stuff, particularly for TV shows and movies and for anime especially. You might have noticed that a lot of them have dropped off. Like, they're not made anymore. And if they are, they're in a podcast or streaming type format. Like, most of it's gone. There used to be a lot of it, and now it's almost all gone. And the reason for that is really because of what I just was talking about, right? Like, look at somebody like, who's one of the biggest, right? Gigguk, or anyone in his sphere. They all used to do a ton of stuff using anime footage and, like, do review content or various other things like that. They don't do it anymore. And if they do it, which they kind of technically does, I think Gigguk still does a little. If they do it, it's very short and it's not often. Like, it's very infrequent. The vast majority of what they do now, including Gigguk, is basically streaming. Like, or it's a podcast, or it's both. Like, the podcast is basically what they moved to almost entirely, and I don't blame them, because the podcast isn't something that Content ID can ravage. Back on topic with me specifically, there's no law saying I have to commit to one singular thing. I could stream, I could do some random fun little shitpost type videos, and some other types of videos now and then. It's just that for the time being, I'm really out of ideas when it comes to that stuff, because most of my ideas involve things I don't have resources for, or they're things that are just going to get destroyed by Content ID, and I just can't do them. It kind of seems like streaming games is the thing that I have to do. As for that, what kind of games would I play? Like most people, I'm just going to wing it and see what I like to stream and what people like to watch. I'm not really anticipating being a person who just plays one game or one franchise of games or whatever. I do want to resume Fallout New Vegas and stream more Bethesda games in general. I spent an enormous amount of time modding them, even recently, so it should keep things fresh, while trying out some other games as well. I kind of would rather aim for variety. It will come down to the numbers. If I want to grow this channel, it will require presenting ideas to you and looking at the data YouTube gives me, then making changes accordingly. Because that, again, kind of comes back to how I need to run this as a business. Like, I don't want to make it a completely corporate shill type thing in the future if it ever actually does take off and go somewhere decent. But I need to actually be realistic about it and narrow in on the things that are working. I hope this answered most of your questions, but if you have any more, feel free to ask me and I'll do my best to answer them in the comments. I'm sorry that I had to basically change everything with the channel. I know it's been a while, but a lot of people are new. I get a lot of rotating door of people here, where people enjoy my content, then they see that I'm not making anything new, and then they fuck off. That's kind of how it's been for a while now. And that's mostly, I think, due to the fact that I did audiobook stuff so well, and I got really fucking good at it. And it's because I did it for a long time, and I put in a lot of hours, a lot of research and resources to make it the best I could make it. And ultimately, it kind of came to nothing. And there's not really a whole lot that I can do with it. Life do be like that sometimes. Sometimes you get into the wrong thing. But I'm hoping to just recreate what I've already done. I'm hoping to just make a YouTube channel that can entertain a decent number of people. I don't need to be gigantic. I just need enough to sustain myself and to basically just enjoy myself and entertain people, because I like entertaining people. I'm kind of feel like I'm a bit cornered in that sense. Like, this is what I have to do. I want to make it entertaining, and it's going to be the same process that it has been for the audiobooks. So the audiobooks started out pretty rough. Not the worst that you could conceive, but they started out pretty rough. Both on, like, the production value of things and on the mixing side of things. The fact that most of them, the early ones, didn't have sound effects, even though I wanted it. It's just there wasn't the same amount of resources available, both financially and just, like, what you could find on the internet. It was pretty low. It's just gotten to that point where I'm ready to move on to new things, and I think that this will just be the same process that it's always been. I start out from nearly the beginning, from zero, practically, which, considering the state of the channel, that's mostly what it is, because despite having over 4K subscribers, I'm not remotely going to get that kind of retention rate, especially on a live stream or a VOD. At least that's been my expectation so far. I would like to get live streams on a schedule eventually, but schedules are very hard for me just due to the way that my life is sometimes. But I would like to work my way toward that if I can. And I assume that a schedule would probably help a lot in terms of getting viewers. There's a whole bunch of stuff like that that I'll have to work on. In general, live streaming, especially for games, is just, it's another skill. It's another thing you have to practice. It's not like I don't have any practice or skill in it. I've done it off and on over the years here and there. And it's not that dissimilar to some types of content that I did many, many moons ago. It's just something that'll be a bit more awkward or not necessarily as good or as high quality as just like the audiobooks were. But then over time, I get better at it. I, learn how to do better, and that's just how it is. And I think once I reach the point where I really got a strong handle on it, on what I want to do with the content, how I want to present myself on stream, how I interact with people, I think once I do all that, and I got that down, that'll make a big shift for me, and it'll help improve things in a more positive direction, and I'll be able to keep making better and better streams, which I could probably, ideally, convert into, like, actual YouTube videos as well. That would be the ideal thing, where I can condense them down into, like, quality YouTube videos where they can just be watched even if people don't watch the live streams. That would be the hope. I don't think I got much else to say. For the record, parts of this video were scripted, but a lot of it wasn't. I'd say it's about half and half scripted, half not. Mostly just to help keep my words on track and keep the topic on hand. Again, I'm sorry that this is had to change so much, but I hope that for the few of you that do stick around for this major conversion and ongoing rebranding, I hope you have a good time. I hope to see you in live streams on chats. I hope to see you in comments for any of the few odd videos that I make. And I hope to see you on Discord as well. If you would like to join my Discord, I encourage you to do so. It's only got a very minimal barrier of entry. You just need to be of the appropriate age bracket. You need to be over 18. It's a small Discord, but it's got some nice active people here and there. But again, it's small. It's like single digits of people who actually post more frequently. But you know, that's why I'd like more people. Help get a few more people in. Get more growth on the Discord. I like talking to people on there and sharing stuff. I actually share most of my activity on the Discord as opposed to anywhere else. So it's really the best way to keep up with what I do. Anyway, that's it for me. So thanks for listening if you listened to the whole thing. And I'll see you in those live streams, all right?